I'm getting death threats and told to kill myself because of the video I made about Dr. Jason Arday, so I'm only going to make this one video. And then I'm going to keep finishing up my business and then going to the beach, because you don't get to bully me on my page. I will block and report you. The overall takeaway I want to get out of this video, and I'll go into it more, is one, disconnect between understanding systemic harm and individual accountability is vastly not understood in America, and it is very difficult to rectify. And two, I don't think how many of y'all don't know that we do not wish you dead. A lot back and forth in the comments on if or if not he did plagiarize. That is important, but does not dismiss the point that someone should not be bullied to the point of harassment, to the point where they want to die. I can take back my statement that there's no evidence. Where I'm kind of is I have seen so much, both in working in academia and in the clients that I have had, what is allowed and who gets antagonized. Once someone has decided to make someone a target, it gets crazy. I have been the grad student who has caught a student taking a test with under their foot, under the desk, a highlighted copy of the test, answers highlighted, turned them in, and been told, unless you can prove their eyes were on that paper, we can't do anything about it. And after that, as a teaching assistant when I was teaching classes, and even as adjunct faculty, I stopped reporting people to the office and instead just gave students zeros when I knew their Turnitin score showed 100% plagiarism. And this was before AI. I have also taught a class at Stanford, and it was during 2020, and I found out that I could not virtually proctor the exam. I was not allowed in their honesty policy. Now, I checked that policy this week with everything going on. It has been updated since 2023. So maybe Stanford, being in Silicon Valley, was just more concerned about privacy breaches and all that was going on at that time with online surveillance. Maybe. I don't know. I can't speak to the cause behind it. But at the time, I remember thinking, that's a really great policy to excuse letting some people get away with things and others not. I've seen this. I'm anti-plagiarism. It is also just very ironic to me how one man in England harassed for years a time when intellectual property is being stolen, repackaged by a handful of rich white people, mostly men, with AI. So that's where we run into the systemic versus the individual. Is there were not already good systems in place to take accountability for it. And that this one person who fit a stereotype bore all the brunt of it, not anybody else. When we have situations like this, it is part of why people who are aware of these injustices don't say this isn't right, because everyone should be held accountable for plagiarism, but everyone is not. The severity of the punishment varies dramatically. This applies to a lot of things, like that the only person in jail for the Epstein list is a woman. I think Ghislaine Maxwell should rot there. I also think she shouldn't be rotting alone. A lot of the comments I'm getting are focusing on other examples where someone who was accused of something have harmed a woman in the past. And as a woman, I hate to see y'all using our pain conveniently for you, because you don't do the same thing about our sexual assailant in chief. You don't do the same. You have the audacity to say that false claims ruin men's lives, while almost every man on the Supreme Court has been accused of them, and he seems to be doing quite well. So we run at these points in society where we split into the teams. Someone is saying you can't accuse someone because they're marginalized, is how it's interpreted. And the other is saying you're just holding up standards. And this is the thing is, standards aren't being upheld at all. That's the problem. There isn't a standard. It is always dependent on who gets away with it and who has a stereotype. And then if we only punish some people, that's why we don't take it as seriously. That's why it's not getting the same outrage and is actually like, guys, maybe this is overkill. Very often, people don't see this until it impacts themselves. A completely different example that's not as tragic that is going on right now is a lot of people talking about clavicular and looks maxing. And a lot of people said, hey, women have always done this. Why are we only seeing it extreme when it happens to a man? This is similar in the line of, for a long time, women have said we're held to unfair standards of what we have to do to be considered acceptable enough to have jobs, be treated well in society. And nobody cared till it happened to them. And we have to start caring before it happens to us. Because a lot of you want the excuse of saying you're upholding standards, but when you don't hold them up consistently, you are actually just showing us that you have found a way to justify your ism, whether that's against women, people of color, etc. And even if you are found guilty, we do have to have similar standards on what the consequences are, and they should match the crime. This gets to my second point, that I think a lot of y'all don't realize how many of us who disagree with you and want justice don't actually want you to be unalived. Can't speak for everyone, But again, a lot of the comments, again, because I'm a woman, is always going to get to like, oh, well, what about, let's weaponize your woman identity. What about all the men who have charges? I still would not wish most of them dead. I want them to be held accountable. I want their victims to be protected. I want them to never be able to harm someone again. I don't inherently wish all of you dead. This is like very black and white thinking that accountability has to be this horrible thing you cannot get redemption from. There's a lot I can say in this. I'm not going to, but you don't get to bully me on my page. I'm not a rage bait content creator. I do not make money based on how many views I have. I don't need your rage engagement. You will just be blocked and reported. I am concerned for the people in your life, especially who are more vulnerable, including children around you, considering you have such violent fantasies. So maybe think on who told you you were worth so little, why you have such low self-esteem there, and yet also why you have a hard time holding people who remind you of yourself to the same level of accountability as people who are not similar to you. Because I am pro accountability. I still hope that most of you make it to a long and healthy life.